Alrighty, here we go. We're here with Music and Entertainment 6816, and we're here with Tom Wopat. He is here in Cooters in Nashville, Tennessee, and we're going to interview him on some of his days when he was with Dukes of Hazzard and some of the current stuff he's doing right now. So we hope you enjoy it. So here we go. One of the first questions I wanted to ask you, Mr. Wopat, was how were you approached to be on the Dukes of Hazzard show?
Well, it was pretty much standard issue back in the day. I was doing auditions for different commercials and TV shows. And originally, actually, I read for the scene I read Bo's part for a casting director in New York City. I was there at the time. And I got a call later in the afternoon. This is back in the 70s, remember? This is back in 78. And it wasn't like you got an internet message or anything. There was none.
Right.
And I got a call and they asked me if I wanted to fly to Los Angeles and screen test for the show. So I said, sure, I'll do that. And so the next day I put some clothes in a paper bag and got on a flight and flew to LA. And I met John the next day on Thursday.
Rich, did you get this picture?
And then Friday night we did a screen test, and they basically told us that we had the job. So 10 days later we started shooting.
Wow. Had you worked with any of the prior cast members prior to this with the Dukes of Hazzard in any movies or any shows prior to that?
I hadn't really done that much work. I had done some commercials for television, and I had done a couple of soap opera things, but it really limited. Most all of my experience was on stage.
Where did the name come from Luke Duke? Was that
Who knows? You know, Guy Waldron, I guess.
okay?
He's the one who wrote the original script, and I think that's where it came from.
Some of the stunts that were on the show, did you do them yourself or did you have someone else that did them, or was it a combination?
Most of the physical stuff we tried to do ourselves, John and I both.
Okay.
Because we enjoyed the fist fights and that kind of stuff. We had a little deal. I am not a swimmer, so I let John do the water work when there was scenes that took place in the water. And then he was not much of a heights fellow, and I had been a roofer before I came to New York. So if we had stuff that entailed some climbing and being up on top of buildings and stuff like that, then I did that stuff.
I noticed that most of the filming, Tom, was done in Georgia. Was that done
No,
for the...
that's not true.
That is not true.
That's
We'll
not
let
true.
you set
The
it
first-
straight today.
The first 5 episodes were shot in Georgia,
Okay.
and then we moved the whole production to Los Angeles.
Okay. And that's where it remained. How many episodes were you a part of with the Dukes of Hazzard with your character?
A bunch.
Bunch.
100 and some. I mean, I think that the episodes with Coy and Vance, I think they were 16 in total.
Okay.
And they started off that one season, and then we came back and finished it.
Now, we also noticed that Waylon Jennings did a lot of the narration that you seen. You did not see his face, but you heard his voice. Was that a producer type of idea? Was that part of the cast that said, hey, why don't we try this to add to the kind of show?
No, I mean, we had no input whatsoever. The narration was... It's a fix. It helps you get from one scene to the other without having to shoot all the explanation. Some of the explanation could come through the balladeer, which is what he was referred to as.
Right.
And Waylon was great. It was really fun working with him. I got to be pretty good friends with him. And it's been done before, doing shows with a narration, but I think that Waylon lent a certain quality to it that you didn't often get in a situation like this.
Were different storylines brought to you at any time that said, okay, on this particular episode, what do you think about your character doing this? None of that.
No. They didn't ask us. And one of the reasons we left was because we felt like they were making the characters and the whole the action and everything more cartoonish all the time. It's easy for them to do that. And we ended up getting some new fresh writing, and I ended up directing half a dozen episodes. But the writing was kind of on the wall. They had they meaning Warner Brothers had a simple way of producing the show that they thought was effective and cost effective, and they didn't really understand how impactful it was in the Midwest and the South, and they didn't realize what they had in their hands, and they let it go.
If you would have had one thing that you could have done script-wise that you could have said, I wish I could have did that with my character, what would that have been? If there was just one thing that stood out in your mind that you could have changed about either about your character or added to your character?
I don't know. I mean, the nature of the show was that neither of us could have an occupation because we wouldn't be able to, take off and do the things we did. It was confusing in some ways because I think like the movie that they made later played the boys as just slackers, that weren't interested in working and making a living. And that was not really the truth. It was just kind of the fact that we found ourselves at loose ends a lot. And it was an interesting construct all around, and it worked to a large extent.
Do you think in any way that being on the show typecast you on any future projects after you left?
It's unfortunately for me, I had already been on Broadway in a leading role, and I got back on Broadway pretty quickly afterwards. So I was taken semi-seriously as an actor and a singer and that stuff. It's pretty hard to worry about that kind of stuff when you're in the heat of the battle. And, just to have a job and to enjoy the job you're doing is a blessing.
And why do you think this show has been so successful over the years, in your opinion?
Well, I think it was appealing on a family basis, which is important. It was intergenerational. There was no sex, there was no cussing, there was no blood. So there was nothing to offend the people that would be offended by that sort of thing. And, we had a certain amount of visual appeal. And that kind of vehicular action had never really been seen, or not nearly to that extent.
Right. When you go overseas, I know you get a different type of audience, but have you seen that audience to be greater in numbers than you have seen in the States towards the Dukes of Hazzard, or about the same?
I don't get overseas all that much, especially anymore, but no, people who are fans of the show are fans of the show. And the thing about this show is that the car is so iconic, both in the way that it's used in the show and then in its appearance, that it's the most famous car in the world.
That's true. Everybody knows exactly what car you're talking about whenever they see it. Was there anyone on the show that throughout the years to current that you get to speak to on a regular basis, that you got really close to? That
John's my guy. There's a couple of there was a assistant director that was a really good friend of mine. One of my stuntmen is still a really good friend. It's hard after the years. I mean, you know, I looked at a picture over there of cast and crew from one of the final years, and half of them are gone. You know, it's an intense business.
It is. Things happen, you know, come and go, and that sort of thing. As you talked about your stage career that you were on Broadway and stuff, how much of that do you get to do now?
I don't do too much of it anymore. I'm into my 70s pretty firmly, and they don't really write leading parts for guys in their 70s. So I don't have a lot of interest in being in a show where I'd be on stage for, 15 minutes in 2.5 hours. That doesn't appeal to me.
As far as movies go, are you still doing movies right now?
Look at stuff. I mean, I did a series of movies for the INSP network, and I think they were pretty good. The County Line movies, there's 3 of them, and they were very well received. And maybe we'll do some more of that. It's hard to say. I don't really judge things on how much activity is currently going on. I create activity. I've got a new record coming out as we speak, and it's a new record. It's old material. It's stuff I wrote in the 80s, and I demoed, but I never put them on a record. And so I actually took the demos and we digitized them, and they're going to come out next week after that. So yeah, got new stuff coming. I have another project where I recently sang with a big band, a jazz orchestra in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and we recorded it and videoed it, and I believe we'll put together a pretty decent little DVD of that show. And some, that stuff's exciting to me. I still sing a lot. I still play a lot. I still do a lot of appearances. The Cooters thing has been a blessing, as I work at each of the Cooters stores twice a year. And, the fans really keep this show alive. And for me, that's been a way to get my music into the situation to where the Dukes fans will come to hear me play. And it seems to work. So as long as they keep coming, I'll keep coming.
A couple more questions before we end the interview.
Sure.
Do you do any type of, or have any intentions of recording with John Snyder or any of your solo work, or have you approached him about that to maybe y'all do some duets or do some things that maybe you may want to go ahead and do? Here you go. There it is, Home for Christmas, y'all. You can't beat it.
We did
Tom's
it.
gave it.
We did it like 15 years ago almost. We did it a long time ago. I think it's 2012.
Right.
But there was some really nice work on there, and we'll sing together again sometime. I think we'll probably be on screen together sometime again as well. It's just we've gone on with our lives, and our lives have diverged. The political situation has been divergent as well, and we just it's all a matter of how things just kind of move around and come back together again. And John and I are very close.
Right.
We talk on a regular basis. I fully expect that we'll work together in several different fashions, hopefully in the near future.
And last two, what do you want to be remembered for? Is there anything particular, whether it be something regarding to do Hazzard, some solo stuff, anything that you think you want people to remember you for when you're no longer here, and say, you know what, that resonates with me about Tom?
I sang the national anthem at Lambeau Field.
Okay, not too many people can say they did that.
And at Yankee Stadium.
You can't beat that.
I've sung at Carnegie Hall.
That is things that people cannot say
So,
they did.
I think the singing is probably the thing that I'm most proud of. There have been a couple of theatrical performances. The Glengarry Glen Ross that I did 10 years ago, I think, was fairly exceptional. And I got a nice note from David Mamet about that. The show I did was a combination of the most fun and the most rewarding on a personal basis was probably Annie Get Your Gun with Bernadette Peters. Mm-hmm. And she was the best to work with. We had a connection on stage that was rare, is rare. It's hard to, those things, they talk about that a lot, about the chemistry between people and, like Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire, and I don't know what their chemistry was.
Right.
But I assume it had to be pretty good for them to do all that work together and her not to just turn around and smack him one.
It certainly takes a working relationship where two people or more are working together, and it kind of gels.
John and I have had an amazing working relationship for over 40 years. And Bernadette and I had a really fine working relationship for 2 years plus. And that performance was probably the culmination of what I do, as far as singing and acting and holding up the male lead in a musical. I've had a lot of fun. I've got to be a hero.
Well, thank you so much, Tom, for taking the time to interview with us, and
My pleasure.
we hope that everybody that watches this broadcast will enjoy the interview, because so many of you already been saying you can't wait to see the interview regarding the Dukes of Hazzard.
Well,
so
cool.
Here's your chance. As always, subscribe, share, and so that we can bring more and more to you in the future. And like I said, once again, thank you so much, Tom, for taking the time to sit with us and answer the questions. God bless you, and we wish you the best in the future. Thank you so much.
Brother.